Assalamualikum OyaRahmatullahe OyaBarakatuhu. Welcome to my virtual classroom, MKA Classroom. Now let's start today's video tutorial. Now we are going to start break-even analysis. Break-even analysis used to indicate that the level of operations necessary to cover all costs and to evaluate the profitability associated with various levels of sales, also called cost volume profit analysis. So from uses break-even analysis, it is also called cost volume profit analysis. Why we use break-even analysis? To determine the level of operation to cover all the cost and to evaluate the profitability associated with various levels of sales. The firm's operating break-even point is the level of sales necessary to cover all operating cost. At that point, earning before interest and taxes equal to 0. So break-even point, the level of sales necessary to cover all operating cost. The point at which EBIT equal to 0. The first step in finding the operating break-even point is to divide the cost of goods sold and operating expenses into fixed and variable operating cost. Fixed cost are the cost that the firm must pay in a given period regardless of sales volume achieved during that period. The costs are typically contractual rent, for example, is the fixed cost because fixed costs do not vary with the sales. Fixed costs do not vary with the sales. We typically measure the relative to time. For example, we would typically measure the rent as the amount due per month. Variable cost vary directly with the sales volume, as like the shipping cost. For examples, they are the variable cost and it is vary with the sales. So we may see in here P represents as sales price per unit, Q represents sales quantity in units, FC fixed operating cost per period, VC variable operating cost per unit. So we know that operating leverage is related to the sales revenue and EBIT. So how we can get sales revenue? Sales price per unit into quantity less fixed operating cost FC and variable operating cost, variable cost per unit into quantity. Then we can get the EBIT, sales minus fixed operating cost minus variable operating cost, then we can get EBIT. EBIT P into Q minus FC VC into Q. VC variable cost per unit into Q, FC fixed cost per period, price per unit to quantity. Then EBIT we can have the EBIT Q into P minus VC minus FC. So that is the formula for EBIT. Then as noted that operating break-even point is the level of sales at which all fixed and variable operating costs are covered. At that level EBIT equals to 0. Then if we setting EBIT equal to 0, then we can, if we solve for Q, then we can get Q equal to FC P minus VC. Q equal to FC divided by P minus VC. That is our break-even point. Is the firm's operating break-even point. So for as an example, assume that sells posters, a small poster retailer, have fixed operating cost of 2050. Its sales price 10 taka per poster. Its variable operating cost 5 taka per poster. So what is its break-even point? Break-even point, if we calculate by the use of our break-even point formula, then we can find 2500 divided by 10 minus 5, that is 500 units. That is the break-even point. At sales of 500 units, the firm's EBIT just equal to 0. The firm will have positive EBIT for sales greater than 500 units and a negative EBIT or less for sales than 500 units. We can confirm by substituting the sales volume above and 500 units. So this is the graph of that problem. There is a 500 units. 500 units into 10. That means 5000 taka is the break-even point, and 500 units the break-even point. If this company produce below this 500 or earn below the 5000 taka, then it faces losses. This area are losses area. These are the fixed operating cost, and sales start from 0. There is the sales revenue, and if this firm operate more than 500 units, then it earn profit, or more than 5000 taka, it should be earn profit. Profit is in this point. Changing cost and operating break-even point. A firm's operating break-even point is sensitive to a number of variables: fixed operating cost, fixed operating cost, sales price per unit, variable operating cost per unit. These are the sensitive variables that will have effect on break-even point. The sensitivity of break-even sales volume Q to an increase in each of these variables. Each of these variables, that means fixed operating cost, sales price per unit, variable operating cost per unit, if increases, what will happen to our break-even point? fixed operating cost if increases, effect 1 operating break-even point increases, sales price per unit increases, effect 1 operating break-even point decreases, variable operating cost per unit increases, then effect 1 operating break-even point decreases. Note that decrease in each of these variables shown would have the opposite effect on the operating break-even point. So here as an example, assume sales booster wishes to evaluate the impact of several options: increasing fixed operating cost to 3000, increasing sales price per unit to 12.50, increasing the variable operating cost per unit 7.50, and simultaneously implementing all three of these changes. So in our previous examples, we have learned these previous examples. There we have a fixed operating cost was 2500, sales price per unit was 10, and variable cost per unit was 5. But here I said there would have several changes. It's like increase in fixed operating cost. Here is increase the fixed operating cost to 3000, there increases 600 units. So if this firm produce and sell 600 units, then it become the break-even point. On the other hand, operating break-even point, if the selling price increases, then there are 333.33 units. That means decreases the quantity. That means Q, break-even point. That means if this firm sells 3,333.33 units, then it has its break-even point. On the other hand, if the break-even point, if the variable cost increases, then there increases its units. In the same way, if the break-even point increase the sales price and increase the variable cost, then it also increase its unit. So comparing the result operating break-even points to initial value of 5000 units, we can see that cost increases, rises the break-even point, whereas the revenue increases, lowers the break-even point. The combined effect of increases all of these variable and variables action 4 also result in an increased operating break-even point.
This all about today. Stay home, stay safe. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuhu.